Last night, the Path of Fire expansion released, and I hungrily devoured it. I wanted to give you guys a bit of an update on what my experiences have been in there. For those of you who maybe haven't been able to play the expansion yourself, or have got a bit of downtime, maybe you're on a shift at work or something, and you want to see how what you did compares to what I did, and whether maybe you had missed anything that was fun. So my perspective going into this expansion, as you all know, has been to take it easy, has been to take it slow. I have not been rushing to go really deep into the desert. Our guild actually was planning on capturing the Vabian guild hall, but it's so far into the expansion, I don't think it's fair to ask people to rush. So I've been taking my time, playing story and doing things comprehensively as I go, just as I did with Heart of Thorns, and well, it's been an absolute blast. So let's talk a bit about how day one went. First of all, there were a lot of crashes and DCs. Bit of an ugly thing. Now, I think if you were an EU player or generally on the EU servers, things were worse. My experience was that over the 9 hours-ish that I played, my entire playtime, I crashed about 3 times, I think. And at one point, I managed to trigger a bug by leaving a story instance early. And I think that was just mostly an unexpected thing that I did that the devs hadn't sort of anticipated. But aside from that, my playtime has been very smooth. There haven't really been any bugs. There hasn't been any latency issues and lag especially, which is what I would mostly be worried about with an MMO launch. The mega servers have worked pretty well. There's been tons of people in the new maps, and they've been readily available and easy to spot as I've been exploring, which is also a little bit different to Heart of Thorns, where we had major problems with that. And so I think generally speaking, those 9 hours have been really fun. Not much has been holding them back whatsoever. What I'm going to be talking about today, guys, I just mentioned a little bit, is not going to be specific story spoilers, so don't worry about that. None of these recaps that I do, I'll ruin that stuff for any of you, but I do want to talk in sort of broad terms about how I went. Now, it's 8 or 9 hours of gameplay. I actually recorded almost every second of what I did, so I can't give you it all, but some overviews. It took me roughly 6.5 hours, maybe 7-ish, to finish the first map and move on, and what I mean by finish is to experience everything sort of broadly speaking. Now, Guild Wars has always been a game where you can feel finished with an area, but in truth, there's tons you haven't seen. You haven't got hidden achievements. You haven't seen most of the events that run because they're all very, localized in very specific areas. They're not always going, so it's easy to miss stuff. But in Path of Fire, that's even more so true. I say that I finished the first map at this point in my first 6 hours or so, but that's not quite right because of the mastery system. That's not quite right because of mounts. There are still an enormous number of places that I haven't seen just because I can't climb up to them or I can't interact with them. The most incredible of them all is attached to the demo area we could almost reach before. If you guys check this phenomenal area here out, there's this beautiful temple right near where the expansion starts that it looks like you need the final mount to be able to properly explore. This, I believe the devs alluded to in one of their live streams and maybe some of the other stuff pre-release, where you need the wolf, it seems, to be able to travel through these portals and do this crazy jumping puzzle around this beautiful temple. The expansion has had a lot of great, incredible places that look like this, and right now I haven't been able to get to them. So the way that the first map is designed is you can get map completion. You can get all the points of interest, you can get all of the vistas and stuff with just the Raptor, which is what you acquire in that map, but there's still so much other stuff to go and see. It will be curious to me to see how they incentivize players to go there. There is also only one adventure on that map, so it's not like there's hidden adventures out in the fringes that you need special mounts to be able to get to. So maybe it's just collections. My main fear is that all those beautiful extra areas most people won't end up going to because there's no good enough reason to check them out. But with the new achievement UI thing, hopefully more people are invested in that side of the game, and we will see that they get as much exploration as they deserve. So yeah, the other thing I did in that original batch was finish all the story associated with that map. I originally believed that meant I was finished with Act 1 of the expansion. It's not really, though. Act 1 extends off into the second map, and I'm not even done with the first act of the story right now. But it took me maybe 8 or 9 hours to get to where I fully am now, which is about halfway through the second map. So let's take a look back at story. We all suspected that there'd be something of a story instance before the expansion taking place in Lion's Arch. That's absolutely true. And again, I won't give you guys specifics, but I've really been enjoying myself. Now, I know me. I know that in the future, and on replay of this, I'll be looking back and I'll be nitpicking stuff like mad. I'll be finding all the little issues, all the things that I'm not a huge fan of, and my criticisms of it will be, you know, quite weighty. However, I must say that before I get to that point, while I'm in the midst of playing it, as I record this video with you guys, I have a lot of fun doing this story. I think that it's all incredibly well built. I think that it's all really well handled. I think a lot of the little issues that have been plaguing this game, like not knowing whether you can talk to a random NPC in the area because they don't properly give you the right mouse cursors, like dialogue overlapping, like not giving certain things enough space to tell their stories. I think all of those things have really been ironed out, and I've so much enjoyed what I've played so far of Act 1. Another thing I often bang on about, and I'm wary of, is, especially when it comes to Guild Wars, storylines that have too many branches and giving the player too much choice in how they handle the way that the story unfolds. Because if you do that too much, it becomes too diluted, and they can't really pay off on the decisions that you're making, and it all ends up a bit crap, which is really one of the biggest issues with the core story in 2012. So I've always been very wary of that, and I always say, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. But I have found that playing Path of Fire, where we get these story decisions to make again, and pretty important seeming ones, at least, they are so fun. I found that I really have missed this, and when Path of Fire has given me the choice, even just to speak to one character first or another one, or particularly a big decision you get to make really early on, really puts a massive smile on my face. And as far as Act 1's concerned, everything has been golden, and no major causes for concern just yet. Now, that remains to be seen whether the expansion story will stay this good. For people who want sort of a real-world comparison, it feels perhaps a little bit better than the Heart of Thorns story, the early story was. But looking back at Heart of Thorns, Act 1 of that was also generally really good, and then Heart of Thorns started to struggle in the later acts, and it remains to be seen for me so far, because I've not played it yet, whether Path of Fire will also drop off, and I guess as these VODs go along, I'll talk to you guys a bit more about that without spoiling things before we get into a proper story summary later on. So the other thing as well, let's talk about the map, okay? So a lot of the footage you might be watching in the earlier video today where I talked about the general patch was demo areas, but of course now the expansion's out, we can extend beyond the demo. The first thing I noticed really of early areas is the Lily of the Ellen, the Black Lion area you get, or sorry, the Dulux area you get with the pass. It is incredible. There's like this pool of water you can drop into, and if you stay still, then there's a subtle current that drags you in small circles. There's a hidden area up top with the Mystic Forge, and it's like a genie in a bottle, which I believe was true of the old Lily of the Ellen as well from the demos, but we couldn't really get a very good look at. Moving beyond the demo, we have areas like that temple that I showed you. The map is gorgeous. You know, I've mentioned a couple of times recently that Heart of Thorns, when you really look back at it, is such a layered and complex and wonderful expansion region. Can Path of Fire really compete blow for blow when it's much more open and simplistic, I guess, because there's less going on? And it really, really does. It also has the advantage of not affecting frame rate so much. I actually think areas of the jungle hit my FPS a lot harder than anywhere I've been to in Path of Fire just yet. So we got that giant temple. That was one of the really cool areas. Some of the hearts that we haven't been able to explore yet. There's a Zephyrite area. I was quite happy with this. This was something that I thought I'd spied in one of the earliest trailers, that there was going to be something to do with the Zephyrite. So there's a bunch of people that have gone to this area of the world after the Zephyrite's left, and they're sort of scavenging. There's a huge amount of verticality there, and I can't wait to go back with the second mount and explore in a little bit greater detail. There's the giant temple in the center, the Cormier Temple. This is every bit as much as I was hoping for when you get to go explore it. There's some cool areas underneath, and you get kind of this beautiful dome. The story that takes place there is really glorious as well. My perspective of how beautiful this map looks might be a bit off because I am, of course, using Reshade, and I don't have that vanilla experience, which maybe I should have given myself. And in fact, if you disable fog in the second map, it can look kind of ugly. So I ended up turning it back on. But I've been consistently blown away. Now, my favorite area of the first map, if you haven't been there yet, guys, is the Brand. Is this area with the shattered pyramid. One thing I was hoping of Path of Fire was that they weren't going to like cop out and reuse a lot of old Brand stuff. So we saw a lot of Brand in 2012. I wanted them to make new forms of crystals and new types of structures and new environments that we could travel to using entirely new assets that have been built recently. And they did. And the Brand is so brilliant. There are so many interesting branded enemies now. This is not a story spoiler, but you can find in the Brand, branded Forgotten, So that's been my first experience of seeing the Forgotten, some branded varieties. I don't know whether or what their capacity in any story will be, but there are all these new forms of brand there. There are, of course, branded Hydra. So one of the really fun things you can do is there's a meta event with a champion Hydra, and once you damage it to a certain point, this Hydra starts charging around the brand, like running through. And what you have to do is get on your Raptor to keep up with it because it's moving this fast. And you get a special action hotkey to try and lasso the Hydra as it's charging around, and you need lots of players to be able to like bind themselves to it. So we're seeing like Guild Wars 2 tethering, which is a fairly newish mechanic still at this point, with mounts in this, and then you've got to like rein it in. I wasn't able to do this in the footage you can see in the background here because I was only playing with one other person and it's a group event. But this is such a cool experience to be able to have. There's also other hidden little things everywhere in the map. Like in the brand, there's a little cave you can go into, and you'll notice randomly on one of the crystals is this glowing blue orb thing. If you jump over to it, it will move to somewhere else, and then it will move, and you realize you're in this little mini jumping puzzle that eventually leads to a nice chest. The other thing that's really struck me about the map, and just general item design in Path of Fire in general, is so many items are taking the opportunity to give us flavor text and just teach us about the area of the world, teach us about burial rites of the, the primeval kings, to teach us about the people who are living there now. You can mouse over so many different items and just learn about life and the ways of that things work in the desert. That they have found so many more ways to inject story and world building. This is what I have always wanted from Guild Wars 2, really. This is a way that they can give us that extra background and feel like this is a real place with a real history that doesn't rely on like clunky achievements and weird reading of books constantly. They filtered it through everywhere, and that's not to say there's also tons of books too. You can find all these pages. It's a really fascinating experience if you guys actually take the time to mouse over a lot of the items that you're getting, and I think I've managed to get a huge amount of enjoyment from that alone. Let's talk a little bit about masteries then. So one of the other things that I can do now is, because I've got my Raptor, I can train it fully. So I ran around in the expansion for day one here with a single celebration booster on. Now, in Heart of Thorns, I had no boosters on because I wanted to have that absolute raw, perfect understanding of the worst case scenario for how long it takes to get experience to train masteries, so that I could talk intelligently about it. There was no point in Heart of Thorns me boosting a ton and then saying, oh, it's too easy, because I wouldn't have had a realistic understanding. So I did that in Heart of Thorns. With Path of Fire, we already knew it was going to be really easy. I'm running a single celebration booster, which is not as crazy if you run XP boosters and stuff. I think for a tiny period of time I was using some fireworks too. But my experience using this one celebration booster is that the masteries feel really well balanced for like a character bound system right now. And I know I talk about that a lot, but you get them so quickly that I could genuinely imagine, and this is with a single a birthday booster, I should say, I can genuinely imagine playing through this on another character and be perfectly happy to train a Raptor up again, or to train what I've done of the Springer up again, because it just felt like it was not something I ever paid any attention to. In fact, that idea of Metroidvania, as far as the Raptor is concerned, that is, I haven't had at all. So when it comes to like Springers and the Sandwolf stuff, I have had it. I've found areas that I'll come back to later. But for the Raptor, like whenever there's been a long jump, it's like I don't think I found a single long jump in the entire game before I'd already trained the long jump. So all these long bridges and stuff, it was just always a natural part of the Raptor. I've finished it out, and I only finished it yesterday, and I couldn't even accurately tell you what every tier of the Raptor masteries do. I've paid that little attention to them. I gained them that quickly. And so this isn't necessarily criticism as much as it is just an observation of what my experience has been. And I'm curious how the future mounts will go. It does feel like maybe there were too few tiers of the masteries. I would have quite liked being able to unlock the Raptor, but then the leap is the first mastery, and then after that, then you get the engage, and then after that, you get the longer leap, and so on and so on. It could have added more tiers, but we will see how we feel as that goes further along. The other thing, of course, that came in the map that I did play a bit of was the adventure. So by did a bit of, I mean I did it once. So there is no incentive whatsoever to do this adventure. There's no part of the story that ever takes you over to it. There are no NPCs. There's nothing really that guides you there unless you really care about the achievements. And I think that's a shame. In Heart of Thorns, they put mastery points on adventures, so everybody interfaced with them at least a little bit. Now, that drew some complaints, but I believe that's because they put mastery points on the higher tiers of the adventures, so you actually had to like pay attention and really grind on them, if you will. You had to learn them, and people don't like that. People don't like having to invest themselves into sort of a different format of the game. So when it comes to Path of Fire, they took all those mastery points out, and at the same time, they made getting bronze, silver, and gold really easy. I think they only had to do one of those. So my experience of the adventure was this: go to the adventure just for the fun of it, try it out once on just a random route, and I instantly got gold, and I've instantly felt myself having no desire to ever do that adventure again now. So I don't think they had to double dip. Too often, ArenaNet double dips with their fixes and changes to stuff, but yeah, I'm sure a lot of people will appreciate it, but to me, I'm just sad now that that's sort of an aspect of the map I bet most people listening to this video still haven't done and forgot all about. The other big thing that obviously I've been experiencing is the unlocking of an elite specialization. So I'm playing on a new character that has no hero points at all, or he had one spare to go through. It's also a character that doesn't have Tempest. So my experience is like someone totally new really coming into Guild Wars 2 here. So I have no Tempest, I only have Corelli to get me through the unlocking of Weaver. My actual unlocking of Weaver, contrary to this other stuff like the Masteries, is a lot slower than I expected. And that's actually a really good thing. I'm loving how slow it is. I had an entire period of time on that map where I got to do nothing but purely experience Weaver sword gameplay and learn what the 3 sword abilities are for each attunement, like, really well. I had a long period of time in this map where that's all I was playing with, and then finally I unlocked my next thing, which gave me dual abilities. I actually realized that right at the start of Weaver progression, they give you dual abilities anyway, and if you spam abilities fast enough, you can use them, even though you're not supposed to be able to have them, which was kind of an interesting thing. But, you know, like, I had all this time to just purely experience and understand baseline sword, and then I had all of this time to experience the dual attacks, and then I had all of this time to experience, like, the attunement mixing components, and now finally I'm starting to get my traits. It's a lot slower than I thought, but I'm genuinely really having a lot of fun. It doesn't look like I will have the thing finished until like the 5th map, and that's great. I think that's exactly the kind of playstyle and experience I wanted to have. Fortunately for people who don't like that, they've allowed people to basically instantly unlock this stuff too, so they've catered to both audiences. I tend to be quite conservative when I think about design, and I like to force people to do things, which is probably terrible. And so, you know, I think everyone should be able to have this fun experience, unless you're taking an established main in, and then you have to resist temptation to not unlock stuff instantly. The one thing I will say for Weaver specifically is Weaver, I know for a fact that if I wasn't playing this entire expansion 2-man, I'm always going around with another person. If I wasn't doing that, I know for a fact that I'd really be struggling on this Weaver. Even with my legendary armor and all the stuff that I could be swapping around, with the way that I have this character built and my refusal to turn off glass, even though I know it's silly for me to keep running glass, I know I would be really struggling if I was doing this on my own, just trying to learn the Weaver and playing with basically no traits there. So I need to change up my mindset a bit there. For all the advice I tell people, I say, yeah, run Marauder's stats, you know, round your builds out and stuff. For all that advice that I constantly give people, I haven't listened to it myself. And I am struggling on Weaver in a lot of places with the desert mobs and stuff. The difficulty of traveling around the world feels slightly easier and slightly less chaotic than Heart of Thorns did. Heart of Thorns had so much going on all the time, but there are still significant and dangerous mobs that you do fight out in the desert, and I appreciate all of that. As a glass earlier, I'm playing kind of the squishiest thing in the game, so my perspective for how difficult it is going to be one of the more exaggerated ones compared to people running around on, you know, very vitality heavy warriors and so forth. So yeah, that's really what I've done. I cannot stress enough how beautiful this map is, how great it has been exploring it. I wish I could show you guys all 8, 9 hours that I played, and especially the first 6 from the first map, to give you every single second. I had a constant, perpetual feeling within me of, oh, I've got to record this, oh, I've got to share this, oh, I've got to share this, and of course that would be impractical to do, but I think that's a sign that there's a lot of fun to be had just from traveling around here. Remember to slow down a little bit every now and then, guys, I would say. If I've held myself back and thought, okay, I'm really going to look at what's going on in the environment here, I've always found more interesting things to do, little stuff that's been laid around in tents or, you know, when you hit mines and so on. And I think that sort of breaking of the pace has been nice. The events have been very cool as well. Like, whenever I found an event, I've deliberately slowed down and stopped myself to finish the defense event or finish an escort that I might not have seen before, even if it's taking me backwards through an area of the map that I've already been to. And for that reason, I've got a lot of dialogue. Don't forget, a lot of NPCs give ambient dialogue if you stand around them for a while. And, you know, I've been trying to really extract as much as possible. And so yeah, that's my experience. I think so far, time-wise, if I was told, you know, 6 to 7 hours to get off of the first map, and there's going to be 5, if this keeps up, I think I'll be very happy with the length of Path of Fire for that initial playthrough. And then there are other judgments we have to make in terms of how good it is on endgame and stuff. But yeah, that all seems really, really solid to me. I still haven't done any of the bounty system. I haven't taken a single bounty, touched any of it. On any map that I've been to, which is, you know, half of the second, as I said. I haven't done any world versus world or PvP. I haven't played a second with a fully maxed elite specialization. I mean, I could go on my main and, you know, max out Weaver. I could go on any of my other characters and max them out. I've not done any of that yet. And neither have I gone back to Corteria at all since playing any of this expansion. So I don't know what it's like in Divinity's Reach right now with all the mounts everywhere, which presumably looks kind of crazy. I am very much looking forward to going back on a skimmer to Draconis Mons and on a Raptor around Divinity's Reach and whatever, but I haven't done any of that. So those are my first 8 to 9 hours. I've been thrilled. It really has been great. Don't just take my word for it. Read around if you want a little bit more convincing, but so far, the beginning has been brilliant. Heart of Thorns, I felt the same though, so we'll see how the week continues. Hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll be back tomorrow for more information about probably Map 2, the Springer, who I have got unlocked, but I'll talk about then and beyond. See you guys shortly.